Imagine you just booked a discovery call, and that contact is already in your CRM. The company info is there, a follow up task is scheduled already for 24 hours out, and you didn't have to touch a single thing. And in 2026, that's not a fantasy. It's just the table stakes. You need a well built Pipedrive account that does that by default. And I've done 167 and counting of these implementations for our private clients. And the ones that actually get used are just ruthlessly simple at the start. And most of the service businesses that I work with usually are in one of these three spots. They're either running on notes and memory or running on an old spreadsheet that they made, or worse, a CRM that they invested in, but nobody adopted just because it wasn't built right. And if any of those sound like where you're at, I made this video just for you. And here's the thing, your CRM needs to do one of three things. Number one is it has to automate your data entry. Every single contact, every single company, every single activity must go into it automatically and accurately so that you are not the one keying it in. The second thing that it must do is it must enforce your next step inside of a sales process. Not just show you where the deals are at, anybody can do that, but make sure that every open deal always drives to a next step according to your sales process. And the system tells you what to do next, not your memory or your hopes. And number three is tell you what's actually working and how to measure it. What lead sources are your best clients coming from? Or where do you tend to lose deals? Or do you even know what your close rate is? That's how you stop going from making decisions on gut feelings and to making them on data, because you have forecasting, you have reporting and dashboards that can show you all of the information that you need. So if your tool, your system, your method doesn't do those three things, then it's just not a CRM. It's maybe an expensive to-do list. The clicking and setup is actually not hard at all. You do it in just a few minutes. That's what I'm about to show you in this video. But where I see teams actually get stuck is knowing the strategy that's underneath it, right? Knowing which stages match to the way that actually sell to your ideal clients, or knowing which levers make the most sense for optimizing where your unique conversion challenges are, or even just getting your team to actually use the thing. So that's the kind of work that we do with our clients. But for this initial setup right now, you could just jump right in with me. And if you use the link that I've included, you get a free extended trial at no cost to you. You don't even got to put a credit card. You could just open up Pipedrive and follow along with what I'm about to show you to set it up absolutely free. So after a few basic responses, you're going to get a blank account and it might look something like this. Go ahead and exit any of the automated setup workflows that might exist, because we're actually going to talk through some of that together. And by the way, if you use the link in our description and you want to follow along, you get the free extended trial at no cost, and then you could be up and running here. You don't need a credit card or anything, so that you can follow along for free. But let's go ahead and dive right in. And in this setup guide, this is just Pipedrive's own onboarding. You can hide this at a later time inside of your own preferences. It's pretty easy to find that. Here you could see this is the setup guide. And along the left side here is how you navigate to the different parts of Pipedrive. So check out my YouTube channel if what you're looking for is just an overview and orientation on everything Pipedrive does. Here, I just want to head right into the leads view and then the deals view, because it's the most important ones to get right on your very first setup. One of the most common challenges that I see sales teams get wrong, no matter whether they're using Pipedrive or not, is that they'll use the words leads and deals interchangeably. And these have different definitions. A lead is its own unique record in Pipedrive, right? And it lives right here in this leads inbox, and it's separate from that deal. So think of this like a waiting room for an opportunity that just isn't ready yet. Maybe marketing brought it in, or somebody filled out a form inside of your website, or it came in through cold outreach or a referral. You might have a little bit of interest and you have somebody that you can contact, but maybe there isn't a real sales conversation yet. And my favorite rule of thumb is to divide it by the functional role. Let me explain. If you have an SDR, or you're doing the job of an SDR, a sales development representative, then that person, sometimes known as your appointment setter, tends to work out of this interface. And then whoever's your AE or account exec, sometimes called a closer, they tend to work in the deals view. And the demarcation point, whether it's a lead or a deal, that I like to use and recommend for many of my clients is whether the call has been booked and it's in the calendar. And I find that that's the cleanest, simplest place to divide because it's very measurable and you can also hook onto it with automation. I'm going to click plus to deal here so that you can see what kind of information gets captured. But as an aside, these are all of the fields that are being automatically populated once you have Pipedrive up and running and integrated with all of your lead sources. You have all of your automation set up. You should have to do this keying in of a deal hardly ever, but this is the manual way to do it. You can even import that old spreadsheet if that's what you're working off of, or if you have a different CRM that didn't quite work out for you, you can just pipe all of that information in here and have all of the deals in the correct stages. That's a big part of what we can help you figure out, but we'll just do this one manually this one time. And notice that it starts by asking you, who is this for, right? So this is the contact person record, and we're going to say that this is Sally Testerson. And as soon as I do that, it's going to ask me if I want to create a new contact because it did not find a match for that person. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes. And let's say that I want to add Sally to testco.com where I already have a organization. So as soon as I started typing test, it found Testco and I can just go ahead and click Sally in here. And for the person record on the right here, I always recommend capturing as much of this as you can. If you have their phone number and email, it's really key because later that's how it's going to automatically bring in some of Sally's communications without you having to key in everything. Great. So we've entered in Sally's information. And there's some other facts about the deal that you can capture in here. We'll go into those deeper in other videos, but for right now, you can just go ahead and hit save, and that's all you need to do to make sure that you've captured this Testco deal or opportunity. And before we go too far, I want to click on this record and I want to update it by clicking up here on the top left and then clicking the into the field. And I always recommend that you give it a descriptive name based off of what's going to happen and something that matters to you. So in this case, we're going to go with managed services, 20 users. And if you want to return to your deals view, there's a couple ways to do it, but one way is to just click deals here on the far left. Beautiful. And now the title has the name of the company and more or less what we're selling to them. And I can very quickly see that in my deal record. Next up, let's talk about the complete sales pipeline, all 6 of these stages. It goes from qualified to demo scheduled, then demo held, and proposal made, negotiations, contract signed. If yours looks a little different, that's absolutely fine. Pipedrive does its best job to kind of guess what your industry sells like. But in my opinion, I've almost always had to modify it, and that's absolutely fine. A best practice here, or a key rule, is to always describe what happened, past tense, right? Never what is happening or going to happen. And that's because otherwise you're going to use this uncertain, blurry line, and you might not be sure if a deal belongs in a given stage. So, like if you had just the word proposal, does that mean that you're going to send the proposal or that you're drafting it to send right now or that it has been sent? So that's why I prefer very clear past tense stages at all times as a hard rule. I've never seen a reason to break that rule. And every single stage should describe a major milestone on your buyer's journey that must happen, right? Again, something that has already happened, not something that you're hoping will happen. So never send proposal, always proposal sent. And my recommendation, let's say that we were doing this for an IT service business or a managed service provider, MSP, might look something like this. Let's go ahead and click the pencil at the top right so that you can enter edit mode for your sales pipeline and join me when you're in this view here. And we'll just start our way at the top left with the name of our sales pipeline. And notice the name sales pipeline is in there. If that's what you have, it's fine. For a lot of the clients that I tend to work with, a name that makes more sense that I recommend often is new business. And let me explain. The way that you sell is going to dictate the pipeline that it goes in. The most obvious example being if you have a renewals pipeline versus if you have a new business pipeline, then those two are going to behave very differently, right? In a new business pipeline, you probably need to make a proposal and a contract and get them signed and then collect payment. Whereas the renewals pipeline might look a little different. And if renewals are new to you, it's just if you use, for example, a retainer agreement, you have a subscription or some sort of membership, some ongoing continuity to what you do, then that usually belongs in a renewals pipeline. And for renewals pipeline, you're going to have different stages and activities than for the very first time that you win business for a brand new client. And so that's why I like to call this pipeline new business. And it makes it really obvious that if it's new, it comes in here. And the stages that I recommend, remember what we said about the functional area, BDRs versus AEs, or setters and closers, whichever one makes sense in your industry. I recommend having the setter work all the way up until the point that they have booked a meeting. And then for your closer or AE to pick up the baton at the meeting has been booked. So that's why your first stage for them is going to be call booked. And then the next one is going to be call held, or showed to call is acceptable as well. From there, let's say that you need to qualify them. And if you do IT services, you might say you also validate the compatibility of their IT environment, right? Not going to go down like if you did Linux and they only do Microsoft and you're like, I'm only a Linux shop, then that would be something you'd need to identify in this stage. But qualified or qualified and compatible. But I'll leave qualified. And then next up, you might make a proposal. I personally think negotiations is a bit of a pointless stage, and I like to keep things simple. Very few people need a dedicated stage for it because it doesn't really change your behavior. All you do is follow up and answer questions. Whereas in proposal made, you had to make a proposal and send it. Negotiations is usually one that is kind of not very clear, so I like to remove that one. And let's say that after a proposal, there is a signature that you need to collect, then I like contract signed or document signed, whatever makes sense for your world. And then once you're ready, just go ahead and hit save changes. You can leave everything else default for now. Here are new 5 stages, all with past tense language, looking great. One common mistake that I see here is that sometimes people use a column for deals won or deals lost or deals on hold. Those are not stages. Those are statuses, right? So there are other mechanisms for tracking a status of a deal, but that is not something that must or will always happen on every single deal, right? Not every deal has to go on hold. Not every deal is going to be won or lost, and so on. So make sure that you don't create these temporary statuses as a stage accidentally. And you might be wondering, well, then how do I know where all my closed won and closed lost deals are? It's simple. You just grab this guy here and you can drag it down and put it into the right bucket. Maybe it's a closed lost deal or closed won. You can also do that from inside of the details view by clicking on the card itself. And you'll notice that at the top right, it has a couple of buttons that you can click from there. Next up, I'm going to show you how to configure 2 must-have settings on day 1. And number 1 is what is your lead or deal source? So to get there, go ahead and click on your initials or your picture here at the far top right, and then enter the company settings. From there, on the left side, make sure that you go down to data fields. And I'll give you a super high level orientation. Just notice that this is the menu we're in, and you have different tabs here because there are different data fields that you can enter for different kinds of records, right? Whether it's a person field, maybe you want to put in their TikTok link, right? You can do that in there. But for the lead or the deal, you're going to want to have lead or deal specific fields. And you can scroll down and then find the source channel and then click on that. Awesome. And here are the out of the box deal sources. And I have never once seen anybody use these exact deal sources, and there's so many of them. It's so noisy. There's nothing wrong with it. Pipedrive's trying its best, but you do need to make sure that these map where do your deals actually come from. So I like to come in here and update these to be accurate to how my business gets deals. So here are some examples of what that might look like. So I've gone ahead and updated it to LinkedIn DMs, word of mouth, maybe somebody filled a website form or a lead magnet or your YouTube channel and so on. So of course, those aren't going to match the way that you get leads, but you need to be aware of where your leads come from and you need a way to track that and for that to automatically happen. So having this is so powerful from day one. I promise you, you're going to want it in the future. So just set it up right at the beginning and then make sure that as you're configuring this, that you automate the entering of that information no matter what channel it came from. And then when you're ready, just go ahead and hit save. And next, there's a principle in CRMs that's going to help you no matter what tool you use. And that is to use free text as little as possible, because for data and reporting, that variability just absolutely wrecks your reports. Because if it's free text, let's say that you had a sales rep filling in notes, or you're that sales rep. One day, you're going to type in LinkedIn. The next day, you're going to type linked space in. And then another day, you're going to abbreviate it to LI and so on, right? Or maybe later you put a guy I met on a conference and later DM'd, right? All of these might mean the same thing, but it dirties up your data and it fragments it and it makes it really hard to turn it into anything that you can count. And that is going to give reporting a really hard time. So wherever you can have a structured drop down where you choose the one option, that's going to be the best way to do it every single time you can. So we're going to do that with the lost reasons next. So head back over to company settings on the left. And then from here, you'll notice that there's this tab that says lost reasons. Go ahead and click that. And then you can manage the predefined lost reasons. This is that second must have first day configuration that I recommend for absolutely every one of my clients. So go ahead and click on lost reason. And you might be curious, what is a lost reason? Well, for most businesses, you end up putting the following: no budget. Another common one is bad fit. Then there's timing and priorities. Sometimes you're unsure of what happened and they stopped responding. Occasionally, I'll see a deal die because the champion failed to bring in the decision maker and they wanted the deal. They had, everything, but they basically didn't have the authority to make the deal. So you can put that into your own words, but tracking that reason is important. And a spicy one that I rarely ever see anyone add into their CRM, but it's the most honest one, is either me or us. All of the other ones imply that they did something to not buy, but occasionally you screw up a deal. And you need a way to track that. It's very honest. Like if you showed up to the demo failed, you had a whole room full of execs and you wasted all of their time and you botched it, you need a way to track that, right? So that now we can build the systems to get airtight around these. So a lot of the time when we're talking about lost reasons, I see sales reps kind of like clam up and they feel a little bit gross because they want to bury their head in the sand and just talk about wins and go on to the next one and only celebrate the things that are going right. But I promise you, you lose so much value in your CRM by not tracking lost reasons accurately, because each one of these is a case study that teaches you if you change this one thing, you should be able to prevent it from happening again. If you botch the demo, then just build the system that prevents you from botching another demo, right? Like it's pretty straightforward. And I like to think of each one of these as the prospect telling us, I would buy if you figured this out, right? So now I get to see where are the majority of my objections? What are the majority of the reasons that I'm losing? Maybe I have a lot of bad fits. Then I'm like, well, maybe it's my product and services, or maybe it's my lead list, right? So I have something to diagnose and tackle. And I can also see how many there are, because sometimes I see sales teams and business owners chasing rabbit holes for things that aren't really a problem, for like one-off, one time ever scenarios. But when you have the data, you can look at it and say, for sure, these are the majority of our losses. So why don't we start with the big bucket, right? If it's budget, maybe it's the way that we're overcoming the pricing, or maybe our prices are too high, right? And both of them warrant an analysis to see what's going on. So with that, having the data is the best way to know any change that you made had an impact to your business. So you should be able to see that reflected in the numbers. And speaking of data, let's go ahead and head over to the Insights tab. And this is arguably one of the most powerful parts of Pipedrive because in here you can get reports and dashboard all real time, right? There's no updating an Excel spreadsheet. It's just ready to go. It's insane. So I'm just going to show you that at the bottom here in green, you can click this create dashboard button, which is going to automatically create that first out of the box default dashboard. And it's solid out of the box. But let me just toggle over quickly to an already built out instance so you could get a sense of what that can look like. Awesome. So here is an already built out dashboard with some important key metrics that you should be able to build. We can usually build these together in a matter of minutes. It just depends on what you need in your own process. But arguably the single highest value one that we look at the most is the funnel conversion report, which you can see here at the top left. And the reason why this one is so powerful is it tells you how your deals advance through all of the stages and the percentage conversion. And you can see that relative to time or even down to a specific individual or specific product. You can carve this data however you need to. But here you could see that they have a 30% win rate. You can also see that from the 31 calls booked, only 11 got a proposal sent, which really brings into question if we have all of these qualified, then why are we only sending 11, right? You can immediately spot those constraints inside of your funnel and then troubleshoot and diagnose them because it's just a process or a system, right? It's just a pipe. So we just need to find out where is it leaking and then put our attention there. We can also see how we've been doing in terms of average revenue per month, average value of a one deal, how long is our sales cycle length, do we have any overdue activities, or why are we losing these deals, right? For example, we were just talking about this for a bad fit or no budget and so on. Over here on the left, you have different deal channels so that you could see how the different channels are performing in terms of bringing in deals into your business and which ones you might want to double down on or even cut because it might be a big waste of time and not really bringing you any business. And then also activities in terms of number of leads converted and more so that you could track the performance of your team or different areas, functional areas of your sales process. So that's the build. Just one new business pipeline. Maybe you want to have a separate renewals pipeline, making sure that you get those deal source fields right, those lost reasons, that you get your dashboard up and running. And these are the high level items that you got to check off on your very first time using the CRM. By the way, if you use the link in our description, you've already got the trial, which is extended. That's on us. And please check out our channel for more videos like this one and watch the next video. I'll see you there.